Hello, everyone. I am Hanna, Evolutionary Astrologer, and today I want to speak to you about the Great Saturn, a planet that in many astrological circles carries such a heavy reputation, right? It's often labeled the Great Malefic. There's this doom and gloom about Saturn transits, about your Saturn return. So today I would like to offer a different perspective, and I want to share my own thoughts and perhaps be a voice in rewriting Saturn's reputation, which I feel like it's part of my calling in astrology. I personally have 5 planets in Capricorn. Saturn rules Capricorn, and 4 of these planets are in the house of Saturn in my 10th house. So I feel like I have a personal experience with Saturn all the time, and I'd like to share a little bit of it with you because Saturn ultimately is our greatest teacher, the greatest teacher in our birth chart. So let me get started and share my screen with you so you can we can start to unpack this together. And if you like this video, if you want to get to know me a little bit more, if you want to get to know my work, here's how we can stay connected. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to say hi, you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on YouTube, and you can see my website as well. And I also want to take this opportunity to invite you to the Omega Institute this fall, coming up in October, to come hang out with me, with the goddess herself, Nadiya, and this amazing dream team, amazing astrologers, Lynn Bell, Maurice Fernandez, and Ortley, really just the masters. And the theme is the celebration of the feminine in astrology. So there's so much that we're going to be sharing, be talking about Black Moon Lilith, the asteroids, the meetings of Venus and the Sun in 2026 and how to prepare for them, the eclipses of 2026, and much, much more. And this is going to be such an incredible event. Like, this is so much more than just sitting and listening and watching lectures. This is going to be experiential. There's going to be music. There's going to be ceremony. We're going to play together. And it's really truly it's such an experience to learn and play together. And this is not just for astrologers. This is really for everyone. You know, if you are maybe in the beginning of your astrology studies, or maybe you're already well versed and well seasoned, or maybe you're just simply an astrology enthusiast. This is for everyone. You are very, very welcome. So please come join us. It's going to be so much fun. Now back to Saturn. All right, let's get started. Let us begin. As I was saying before, in traditional astrology, Saturn has been long labeled the Great Malefic. Saturn is the bringer of bad luck, of limitation, of hardship, of restriction. You know, so we have already these words associated with Saturn, which are deprivation, depression, delay, right? And associated with Capricorn and Saturn, who is, was named, his name is Kronos, the god of time, which is the Greek name for Saturn. So when a major Saturn transit approaches, such as the very famous Saturn return, right? Or Saturn is conjuncting, is meeting one of your natal planets, or Saturn is crossing an angle in your chart, it's very easy to panic because the common narrative says life is about to get really hard. But is this truly the whole story? Is this really the full picture? In my opinion, no. It is true indeed that Saturn can bring challenges, but that's just one layer, that's just one dimension of what Saturn really offers. And again, I'm saying this not just as an outsider, an outside observer, but as someone with these 5 planets in Capricorn, 4 of them in the 10th house, which is Saturn's natural domain. So I know Saturn intimately. So I'd like to set the record straight. Saturn isn't bad. Saturn is not your enemy, and Saturn isn't here to ruin your life. In fact, what's happening is that Saturn transits might just be your own soul growing rites of passage that many times you didn't even know you needed. Because the underlying every Saturn transit in your own Saturn in your chart, there's this sentence, there's this phrase that says, you're ready. The time has arrived. So this could be a new position. This could be a new role. This could be a new relationship. But something is entering your life that carries a certain level of weight. And sometimes this weight comes with pressure, comes with responsibility and duty, but it's not here to punish you. It's not here to work against you. It's truly here to mature you. And that does not have to be negative. That does not have to be difficult or heavy in the way that we are really taught to fear. It can be really empowering. It can be grounding. It could be clarifying. It can give you direction and purpose and even a sense of structure to get your vision into form. Because Saturn doesn't just test us, it initiates and it prepares us for what's next. It prepares us for the roles we're meant to take in this life. So let's dissect Saturn together. So Saturn is the architect of our reality because it rules structure, it rules boundaries and time. So anything in your life, anyone in your life that gives you that sense of structure, that steadiness and reliable presence that you can count on, that is Saturnian in nature. So these structures give us that profound sense of security, which is so essential for our well-being, right? Knowing that we're safe, that we have a bed to sleep in, a roof over our heads, a job that sustains you, and money in the bank that creates that breathing room. And maybe, you have mentors and parents and teachers to guide you, to people that you can learn from, people that you can learn right from wrong and what to do and not to do. Maybe even a spiritual practice that grounds you in the easiest of times, but also in the darkest of times. So you see how these pillars, this scaffolding that supports you, that supports your reality, Saturn is the one who helps you build these foundations. It's really governing that process of turning something from a concept into concrete form, from inspiration, from that idea, from that vision, the dream, into something, into a system, into a structure that you can actually live inside of. And this is why Saturn is the architect of our realities, is the architect of our lives. So when you go through a significant Saturn transit, it might be, you might feel like something is being stripped away. Maybe you lose your job. Maybe the relationship dissolves. Maybe something changes that feels like a contraction. But Saturn transits and Saturn doesn't destroy without purpose. It's testing what's real, what's stable, what can last. So yes, it can bring endings, but they're surgical, they're strategic, they are not random. It's removing something that's maybe weak or false or maybe something that's not serving you anymore. Saturn is, again, it's Cronus, the Lord, the Lord of time, the cycle. So if Saturn comes along and says, okay, this is done, it's showing that the cycle with that person or the cycle with that job has completed. Not to punish, but to prepare us for something more enduring the next phase, right? So And it doesn't just tear things down. That's another really important thing. The if something is stripped away, the intention is to rebuild it. Brick by brick. That's his style, step by step, stone by stone, right? Slowly but surely, slowly with lasting results. So Jupiter in our charts is the visionary. Jupiter gives us that vision, the dream. It gives us the confidence and the enthusiasm and to pursue our goals, right? And that positivity and the optimism. But it is Saturn, the one who is going to architect, who is going to work on that blueprint to make the dream, to make that vision come into reality. Saturn is going to really work on the foundation. So it brings certain words like discipline, focus, practicality, and it's ultimately asking, can you commit? Can you show up every day, even when it's hard? So what's really happening is that Saturn is not for the lazy. It's helping us bring our dreams out of the clouds into physical form. It helps us to materialize, to make the intangible tangible. So without Saturn, we float, we fantasize, we see the potential, but we don't really manifest. We don't really bring things into physical form. Or maybe we do manifest, but it's not strong. The foundation of it is not strong enough to hold it long term. So things can fall apart much, much faster and more easily. So this is one of the reasons why Saturn many times is associated with delays because it's taking more time working on that foundation of things. And it's not because it's trying to deny you, it's making sure it's you making sure that the structure is solid before you take steps forward, right? So if we bring this, for example, to a relationship, if you just met someone and it's special and it's a great relationship, but Saturn here is going to be, instead of rushing to move in together to get married, Saturn is going to see, okay, let's check this ground here. Is this person consistent? Can I trust them with my space, with my energy? Our values aligned? You know, is this person really committed? So, and when things get rough, which they're going to get at some point, that's just a part of the reality of relationships. Is this person going to show up for me emotionally, physically, or are they just going to run away? The first moment trouble comes to our relationship. So Saturn will test things, will verify things. But when the answers are yes, and that blueprint proves to be sound, this is when the real building begins. And building something that's lasting, reliable, true, and is such a sobering force in our lives. So, and it's teaching us discipline and patience and mastery and responsibility. And this is why one of the reasons why Saturn is associated with mentors and our role models. It's those people in our lives that embody maturity and resilience and commitment. And also, we can also learn from the role models that are actually not, that can be negative examples, like the harsh parent, the unreliable boss. Saturn also teaches through contrast, showing us not just who we aspire to be, but who we refuse to become. That's out of alignment, right? So, one other, I'm a big, big fan of ancient Egyptian mythology. I think it just brings such amazing wisdom to our modern lives. And one of the things that I want to bring to the table today is this connection between Saturn and Seshat, um, because to me, to truly understand Saturn's sacred role, if we look beyond the Western lenses and we look to ancient Egyptian mythology, Seshat, as you can see on the screen, she is the goddess of architecture. She's the goddess of building and the cosmic design. She's known as the cosmic architect. So whenever I want to build something in my life, I call her in because she is the one who's going to bring the divine transmission of this heavenly architecture into physical form. And as you can see in her crown, there's these conductive antennas, the stars and the horns. So there's this transmission, how she's the instrument of that principle of transmission to help bring something that is much, much larger, the dream, the vision, the goal, something that lives in those realms, but into physical personified form, right? So she is, if we want to go like, to the cosmic forces here, she's truly the architecture of the cosmos manifesting itself in the physical form. And you see how she carries the measuring rod? So that's for the record keeping, just like Saturn. It keeps tracks of everything we do and everything we don't do. And in ancient Egypt, she was connected to the temple. So when they would build the temples, they would build within the architecture of Seshat. You know how the temples in ancient Egypt were these spaces where they were trying to recreate heaven on earth. And, so they would do all these rituals for Seshat to really, for the temple to embody that cosmic wisdom. So, uh, it's really how very much about maintaining the energetic integrity of the temples. So you see here this relationship, just like Saturn, it brings the planning and the discipline, not just for the sake of building something great and strong, but also to bridge realms, to bring heaven to earth through structure, form, through sacred intent. So, she was revered as this teacher of cosmic order, the keeper of the blueprints of creation. And you see how the work, even though we're talking about cosmic forces here, but we're really talking about something very practical, the building, the building, the stones, the action of the action of building a temple. So this is what Saturn is doing. Saturn is helping us to build our own sacred temples in our lives, our business, our relationships, our goals, our aspirations. So it's acting as this transmission channel through which we lay those foundations, we lay those sacred foundations, and Saturn guides us in building, our lives, our structures, our temples, and really the steward. I love this, how Saturn is that steward of divine architecture and the building of anything. The Saturn's lessons, Saturn's gifts, wherever Saturn is in your chart, or when Saturn touches something in your chart, it invites you to your sacred role. It invites you to be the keeper of the order, to be the architect. And maybe it's the role is you as a teacher, you as a parent, you as a doctor, you as a writer, you as a model, as a role model. But whatever it is, it's Saturn is showing you where you're bringing these cosmic blueprints into sacred form, into your everyday life. And so practically speaking, what are some of the Saturnian lessons? Maturation, growing up, taking responsibility, building something with integrity, long-term value, and really showing up fully in your roles. You know, whatever you're doing, showing up 100%. This is why Saturn is it's not for the lazy. That's why it brings the hard work and building and developing your own authority, your own inner authority. And this is how you show up in the world, how you show up in your community, in your family. So the higher expression at a soul level here, to me, the higher expression of Saturn in Capricorn is not about seeking approval or climbing the ladders for the sake of status and position to be the CEO, which are very Capricorn and Saturnian words, right? Status, position, climbing, being the CEO of the company. But it's so much more than that. It's about living in integrity, living a life aligned with a higher order, with divine truth, and letting that be your compass. That even when no one is looking, you're doing the right thing. So it's wherever Saturn is in your chart, that's your great work here on this planet. That's that's where you are becoming a living bridge between the divine and the material consciously. This is where you're here to develop discipline, patience, deep inner strength. And through this self-discipline, you become powerful. It's very much Saturn is teaching discipline as a path to freedom. So just like fine wine, wisdom takes time to mature. Longevity, it's really teaching longevity over immediacy. So it is that message of stay commitment even when it's hard. Resist distractions, resist temptations that pull you off course, avoid the shortcuts, and you will get results. There's this Japanese saying that it's such a Saturnian, such a great example. It says, if you get on the wrong train, get off at the nearest station because the longer it takes you to get off, the more experience, the longer, the return trip will be. So that Saturn, it pulls you back. It says, we can't waste time. So if you're in the wrong course, you know, come out of the train. Um, because if it's ruling time, if it's the master of time, it needs to make sure we are not wasting our precious time on the wrong things. So there's also a test of competence, a test of integrity and morality, so again, doing the right things when no one is watching, but not, so there's no punishments. They're all paths to empowerment. They're really at a deeper level, they are initiations, they're gateways to maturing in order to rise up your own ladder in your own consciousness, in your own soul journey. So instead of looking at Saturn as a harsh judge, we can look at Saturn as the master teacher, the one that's going to hold us to high standards. It's going to force us to do better, to push ourselves, to master ourselves, not out of cruelty, but because it sees your potential and it wants you to rise to meet it. Right? Really, think of the symbolism of Capricorn, the sea goat. It's this extraordinary creature. No one talks about how freaking cool the sea goat is. It's such a amazing creature. It's swimming in the depths of the oceans, and then it climbs to the highest peaks. It's really such an extraordinary creature. And this is where, all of us have a Saturn. All of us have Capricorn somewhere in our charts. So that's where it's saying there's that message that there's no terrain, there's no goal too vast for the committed soul. And we're so used to think of Jupiter as potential and opportunities, but Saturn is very much that as well, you know. But it's saying if you want to make it happen, stay the course, pass the test, and the Saturn rewards will definitely come. So I want to show you some quick examples of that to help illustrate these some examples. So here's a chart of Leonardo DiCaprio. He won his first Oscar at 41 years old for the movie The Revenant, and he was actually snubbed for years. I think he was nominated for an Academy Awards, I believe 4 or 5 times until he got, he received it, which was exactly when Saturn was on his North Node, as you can see. And anything that touches our nodes, our nodal axis, it's connecting to our path, to the direction of our lives. So here you see Saturn bringing the results, the rewards of that long awaited, recognition and the excellence and the mastery. Now he's part of that elite, right? Of the few masterful actors who won the Academy Award. So, new status here and a test of perseverance. The other one is Marlon Brando, also um, won his first Oscar in 1954 for the movie On the Waterfront. And again, another milestone, right? You see that he's right in his Saturn return. So again, there's so much about Saturn return being awful times and nothing good happens. And here we have, someone being recognized for their own personal mastery in leading to public recognition, a lot of credibility here, right? Again, so that recognition of his mastery in the Saturn rewarding the work, not by luck, but really rewarding that sustained effort, sustained discipline. Marlon Brando is actually uh, really the pioneer of method acting. So here he's showing, hey guys, it really, really works, so that passing that test of credibility. Another example is the amazing Nelson Mandela, as he was an anti-apartheid revolutionary. He was a political leader. He was, such a global symbol of justice. And he spent 27 years in prison, which is very interesting because 27 is about to be a full Saturn return, right? So that number really symbolizes the completion of some sort of a karmic cycle that was happening. And the Saturn test, right? It was a test of endurance, it was a test of purpose, it was a test of character. You see how so the outer wheel, this is the chart of when he was released from prison after 27 years. And you see Saturn, the south node on his natal Saturn, right? The south node really representing something from the past, something that was being released. That's, Saturn showing this has been completed, this is done. If there was a debt, if there was a lesson, you've learned it, it's been paid, the end of a cycle. And one amazing thing is that instead of emerging from those, 27 years with a lot of bitterness and rage and anger, he actually emerged very refined with a lot of clarity, a lot of emotional control and vision. So here, he was really embodying that Saturnian maturity. He entered, he was in prison as a radical, and he really emerged as a statesman, really. So refined and steady and really, really aligned with this, really a collective vision for collective transformation. The other really interesting thing too is that, as you can see in his natal chart, he was born with Saturn, Neptune, and when he was released in the sky, there was a Saturn Neptune recurrence. So really showing the recurrence of the cycle he was born under. And again, that cycle of sacrifice with Neptune, there's a sacrifice that was ending and really clearing space for a new path forward, So again, like Saturn Neptune is very much, and this is something that we're in now, in 2025, 2026. And Saturn Neptune is very much about the dissolution of old systems, old regimes and government, and all the structures in our lives that, collapse in order for new ones stronger ones to be built, to be rebuilt. So here you see how he becomes that symbol of that destruction of an old system and the rebuilding of societal order. So definitely here some sort of a soul contract resolution with the Saturn Neptune, some sort of a karmic culmination happening. and how he brought the spiritual release of that collective pain that South Africa, the historical karma, that trauma, and how his own personal trials really mirror that, but also how, this is also the beginning of something so profound of a new era rooted in discipline and vision and really reconciliation. This next chart, this is when he becomes president. He becomes the very first, um, this is actually the first democratic election in South Africa, and he becomes the country's first Black president, which is amazing. And you see Saturn on his IC, right? About to enter his fourth house. And the IC is very much, it's such a personal angle, it's such a strategic angle in the chart because it's representing his home, his roots, his homeland. So here you have Saturn that's really remember, Saturn is pushing us to the roles we're meant to fulfill in this life. So here he's rising to a position of power, to a position of authority. With Pisces, there's this deeper spiritual calling here. And Pisces is about everyone. It's the public, it's the collective. So a collective, a public role of a president and how personal that was for him, especially after everything he endured, and how his presidency was not defined by revenge, but by reconciliation and compassion. So really that higher octave of Saturn's wisdom, which is forgiveness, which is embodying the greatest authority, the one that's in alignment, the one that's in, you know, coming from a strong mind, but also heart-centered. So just really great example here. And the other one is Gustave Eiffel. You might know this name. He was a French engineer. He was the architect of the Eiffel Tower. He designed, he oversaw the construction of the Eiffel Tower, which is one of the most iconic structures in the world, right? Speaking of structure, Saturn. And so a very Saturnian um, representation here. And as you can see, Saturn is crossing his ascendant, which is on a personal level a huge milestone, right? It brought the public recognition of mastery and that big responsibility and visibility, almost like this, his Saturnian identity was being crystallized at this point. And again, how the Eiffel Tower was such a Saturnian structure, right? It's this like feat of engineering and it's made of iron, which is a Saturn ruled metal. It took a lot of discipline, it took a lot of planning, it took a lot of time to complete it. And it really stands as a monument of structure. And it's this iconic now and ultimately very respected and revered and really, we talked about the longevity aspect of Saturn. So how the Eiffel Tower really embodies, that endurance. In the beginning, when it was first built, it was actually meant to only last, only to be temporary, but it stood the test of time. This is a Saturnian phrase. What will stand the test of time? What will endure? What has strength and purpose and value? So again, I do think that, the poetry of the Saturn here on the ascended was, he was really becoming this master builder. He was really the architect of time here. So very symbolic. And it was initially ridiculed. Saturn can bring that judgment, that criticism, but it revealed to be uh, um, respected and of really great, great value and just such a feat in architecture and engineering. And then the last example I have for you is Britney Spears. I'm sure you know her, the huge pop star. She went through this well-publicized mental health crisis in 2007. And after many episodes, she was officially placed under a conservatorship on February 1st, 2008. And what this deal was that she had this legal arrangement that gave her father and her lawyer control over pretty much all her personal decisions, financial decisions, medical decisions, and it lasted almost 13 years, which is very close to 14, which is a Saturn number, right? So Saturn cycles happen every 7 years. So it's 7, 14, 21, 28, etc. So the outer wheel is when it was terminated. You see Saturn on her moon, squaring her natal Jupiter. Moon is the family. So it's in the fifth house, which is the father. Saturn is the contract and saying, you've done your time. You now get your life back. So that reclamation of freedom, emotional reclamation of freedom, and that hard earned liberation, especially with the Aquarius. So most likely severing that completion of that toxic emotional family contract, especially with the father. So definitely a milestone for her, emotional maturation in that if there was, again, if with Saturn, if there's a debt and Saturn comes and says, it's over, you've completed, you're free. And to me, that was what's happening here. Um, Saturn, and I do want to talk about Saturn and the work of the sacred work of repairment. Saturn is that force of realignment. Saturn is that force of restoration. And again, like I mentioned, the highest intention, the highest purpose is to manifest and build our lives, our earthly terrestrial lives in alignment with something bigger than us, the universe, the cosmic laws, God, goddess, whatever word works for you. So it's very much the as above, so below, that mirror of cosmic truth into form. So anything that isn't in alignment, that isn't a true embodiment of this greater truth, Saturn can help us become aware of it and do the work of realignment, or do the work of repairing. So think of Saturn as the spine that keeps us aligned. And going back to ancient Egyptian mythology, this is called the Jed. The Jed is one of the most ancient and powerful symbols, and it's called the pillar of stability, because it's exactly representing, this alignment. And they used to have these rituals, these ceremonies called raising of the dead. So the priest, they would literally erect a pillar that would symbolize the restoration of cosmic order. So same thing with Saturn and Saturnian initiations, they mark rites of passage, where our soul is tested, matured, reshaped. So it's just interesting to think about the connection between the Jed, which is the ancient Egyptian symbol, and the Jedi from Star Wars. It's not officially confirmed. I looked, but I think there could be some sort of a parallel here that suggests that George Lucas might have drawn inspiration from these ancient Egyptian mysticism and esoteric traditions, because the Jedis are all about how they are the guardians of peace and balance, right? And spiritual wisdom. So they use the force, which is this unseen energy field that connects all life, right? So we can also call it the chi or the prana. And they are trained, right? They're trained in self-mastery. There's so much discipline, there's so much inner power, which are very Saturnian qualities. And they go through these rites of passages and trials. So again, it's like the Saturnian spiritual initiations. Um, and their fight, the other thing too, is that their fight for the balance between the light and dark, which again, it brings this harmonization of these cosmic forces. Again, the alignment. How can we find alignment between the light and the dark in every realm of life? So The jet is this representation of the Kundalini life force running through the spine. And it's this symbol of awakened, the aligned self, anchored in the body and in spirit. It's the cosmic axis. So again, this is all Saturn stuff, you know? So you see how deep and profound Saturn is in our lives. And part of its job is to help us shed illusions, to help us shed distractions that can lead or they may have led us off course, right? Through Saturn, we course correct. It brings us back to what matters. So think of Saturn as the chiropractor of the soul that is helping us to adjust if there's been things that are misaligned. If things are misaligned, it helps us bring us back into alignment so energy can flow again. Right. So this is why it rules the skeleton because it provides structure and it really allows us to stand tall, to carry our weight, to move in with strength and to move in with direction. Um, so this is a good question, when your Saturn gets activated or when you have Saturn transits, where are things out of alignment? You know, this is the work of integrity. Are you walking your path with honesty? Are you doing the right thing when no one is watching? Right? Are you living in alignment with your values? So it helps to reveal the long arc of our choices and for us to see what we've built over time, consciously or unconsciously, and whether those structures are strong enough to last. So you see there's a sacred work with Saturn. It's not fast, it's not easy, but it's immensely rewarding and truly the path of real maturity in spiritual adulthood and really, really living a life with deep roots and really real meaning. So we can say that Saturn's medicine is tough love, but it's still love, but it's the kind of love that holds you, that holds us to our highest potential and patiently walking with me, walking with you as we grow into it. A look at Saturn transits. As I mentioned before, you have the Saturn return, which is around the ages of 28, 29, 58, and 87. Those are moments when Saturn returns. Um, it's that moment where Saturn is at the same placement that it was when you're born. The same way that we have a solar return, we call it a birthday. We also have a Saturn celebration, which is a major rite of passage. It's often misunderstood as a time of crises, but it's a profound period of maturation, of self-mastery, a time where you are really called to step into your authority and take on new levels of responsibility. So, again, it marks Saturn transits follow this rhythm of approximately every 7 years. So pay attention to the squares, the oppositions, and then the returns. Each phase, it's an important phase in your development. Um, and it's really interesting too how the number seven, see how the number seven is so part of our human life. You have the seven chakras in the body, you have the 7 days of the week, the 7 days of creation in the body, in the Bible, sorry. We have the seven notes in the musical scale. We have the seven continents. We have the seven colors of the rainbow, right? So, and even if go back to Seshat, if you remember her crown, she has the seven pointed star above her head, right? So again, the crown representing the connection between the earthly knowledge and the cosmic truth, echoing in that sacred meaning of the number seven in ancient Egyptian spirituality. I love working with the number seven too. So, um, when Saturn conjuncts your natal planets, that's also very, very, very important. And it can feel heavy and restrictive, but it brings powerful opportunities to redefine your relationship with the energies of that planet. So, for example, if Saturn conjuncts Venus, it's a time to get serious about love, about your relationship, about your finances. So this is a time where you can get married, or maybe there's going to be a new commitment, or there's going to be some sort of a test in the relationship to see if it's strong enough. Saturn conjuncts the moon, emotional boundaries. That's huge here. It's a period to really gain emotional maturity and bring deep healing. So anything around the home, family, your inner foundation. So it's a time to rebuild things. So if there's, if healing is needed, this is such a time to step into, a new level of authority in your own personal life, in your family. When Saturn conjuncts the sun, again, a new role may emerge. So this might be becoming a parent. This might be launching a business, stepping into a new position of authority. This is such a leadership moment. When Saturn meets your Mercury, career milestones, long-term goals, it's very much about health as well. Are you taking good care of your body? Do you need to do a better job? Do you need to eat better? So anything related to health too is really important. And another example is when Saturn conjuncts your nodal axis. If it conjuncts your south node or your north node, this is karmic. This is really connected to your path, the unfolding of your destiny, the unfolding of your life. So whoever comes in, whoever comes out, whatever happens, there's this karmic quality here. There's this cosmic clock really organizing things in your life. And the other thing too, also really important, even when Saturn is not conjuncting one of your planets, but if Saturn is on the angles, so what are the angles? The ascendant, the descendant, the IC, and the MC, the skeleton in your chart. These moments mark these turning points in your identity, in your home life, in your relationships, in your career. It's really, again, it's a time to set the foundation for the long-term growth and the long-term goals. So after all of that, in conclusion, Saturn is not the villain of the zodiac. It's not here to make your life harder. It's quite the opposite. It's reflecting the force within you that tests you so you can discover your own strength. And this is why, I picked this phrase. I think that's what Saturn says to us. You can do better. Rise to your own mastery. Be all that you're meant to be. And be patient, be consistent, bring discipline, bring effort, bring commitment, because if you do that, it will absolutely bring something magnificent in return, something real. This is why one of the many things I love about Saturn is that if you put in the work, you get the results. The harvest is beautiful, and the rewards are not fleeting. They are the kinds that you keep. So the next time Saturn comes knocking, don't dread it. Open the door for it, roll up your sleeves, get to work, because whatever you build with Saturn really will stand the test of time. And in doing that, you're really living a life that's fully yours, authentic, aligned, as above, so below, grounded, and you become a living embodiment of Seshat herself, really bridging heaven and earth, spirit and matter, vision and form, dreams and form, turning those dreams into structures and turning intentions into your world. So Saturn isn't a great malefic. It's the truly the embodiment of your great work on this planet, however that shows up for you. So I'd love to hear your Saturn placement and what lessons have been a part of your journey. And again, if you like this video, if you like to get to know me a little bit more, or if you want to get to know a little bit more of my work, and or if maybe you just want to say hi, please do so. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you very much. Thank you for staying until the end, and I will see you hopefully next time.